Let's start off, Rob, with Cape independence.
Yeah.
It's something that some historians would say is inevitable, given the way that the world is changing. Would you change your mind about South Africa if the Western Cape were to become an independent country?
Look, I'd feel very sorry for the rest of South Africa. You'd be stuck with the ANC, and you'd go down the plug a lot faster than you are now. But look, it is a bit of a pipe dream, but it's not impossible. South Africa signed up in 1994 to all the international regulations or whatever that allow for independence. When South Sudan went independent, South Africa was a proponent of that and signed that. So it's not impossible that if the Cape had a referendum, the referendum was successful, then South Africa obeyed the laws, the international laws, that the Cape could be independent. It's not impossible. And the Cape has enough within its territory, currently defined, to be an independent country. And when you look at the happiness index, or the countries that you most likely would like to be born in, they're all countries of 5 to 10 million people, a somewhat homogenous culture, one dominant language, one dominant religion. You know, it's the Swedens, the New Zealands, the Switzerlands, and the Denmarks of the world are the best countries in the world to be born into. So the Cape would have five or so million people, a somewhat homogenous culture, you know, a main language which is Afrikaans, and I think could be a very sustainable country. It would be the Rwanda of the South.
Because you do travel. What you don't know is that one of Rob's major businesses is called Invest Africa.
Yep.
So he's actually stimulating lots of investment into this continent. You also probably don't know that he did a SPAC on the New York stock market. Just tell us about the SPAC and what the intention was. I think, again, it's to invest in Africa.
So the SPAC's called African Gold Acquisition Corp. And we raised $414 million on the New York Stock Exchange with a top management team to invest in gold mining primarily in Africa. That doesn't have to be in Africa. And it was the first Africa-focused SPAC. And it's retained its price at around $10 a share, which means that the investors believe we're going to do something interesting. And we've got about a year and a half to do that.
But the interesting part about that is, you know, Africa, you said you've met 85% of the wealthy people on this continent. When you look at the map of Africa, which was drawn by European powers, I did ask this question to Rob Hersov, and I think he deflected somewhat. But perhaps, given your outspoken statements that you've made today, you'd give us a forecast of 50 years hence. How do you think the map of Africa will differ to the way that it looks today? We've only had South Sudan so far, if you like, as a split, but there are potentially others.
So the Western Cape, KZN even, could be its own country. Heaven forbid. I wouldn't want to be there if it does become a separate country. Nigeria is a mishmash. I mean, it's a Christian and Muslim hodgepodge country, could easily become two countries, but there are a hell of a lot of countries that shouldn't be countries. The four biggest economies in Africa are Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, and Kenya, each of which is about the size of Michigan. So, you know, if you're the big cat in Nigeria, you're the big cat in Michigan. I mean, big deal. Okay. So none of these countries are big enough as economies on a global scale. So if you look at the Gambia, I mean, what's the point of the Gambia? What's the point of Sierra Leone? These are too tiny to be countries on their own. Some countries ought to be split in half. Other countries ought to amalgamate into, you know, Cote d'Ivoire, Francophone, and Ghana, Anglophone, ought to be one country. They really do. They produce the same thing. They're producers of coffee, of cocoa beans. They're both investable countries. They're both contiguous to each other. I mean, that would make one fantastic West African country as a combination.
And really where I'm going here is, you've invested in the Cape. You don't invest in an airport to pick it up and take it somewhere else. You don't create the Cape Town Stock Exchange. And I think that is, you said that's the first time. So there will be a Johannesburg Stock Exchange, which is going down, and a Cape Town Stock Exchange, which presumably is going to be going up.
Well, I think the Cape Town Stock Exchange, and Warren, you should really speak to this, as you've been quite a driver here, is going to be very focused on tech and fast-growing businesses. So even though the JSE has a dominant position right now, we think it's going to be the main market for the mining and big industrial firms, where the Cape Town Stock Exchange over the next few years will get the faster-growing, more tech-enabled companies.
Like a NASDAQ, New York.
Exactly, exactly.
Well, it's now the cat's out the bag. I do know that. I also am a director with Rob on a company called Altvest, which I can tell you is and again, Warren's brainchild. If you haven't met Warren, by the way, go and make a point of it. You're going to hear a lot about him in future. And that too has got Warren, just put your hand up so those who haven't seen you, there he is. If you have a tech company you want to list on the Cape Town Stock Exchange, there's the man. There is a lot of things that you're doing, which are long-term things. So why, if you stand here and you're so negative and you say to us, you're not that it's uninvestable, are you taking these long-term bets? Are you hoping that maybe there's a Mandela moment?
The majority of my wealth is overseas. The majority of my income is overseas and will stay over there. So this is more optionality. I love living here. I don't want to leave. I want the ANC to know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm as African as they are, and I'm not leaving this country. But, I wasn't going to invest in longer-term projects in this country. They're highly risky, with EWC hanging over our heads, and me insulting all the people that matter in the aviation business in South Africa. I'm not sure that's the smartest thing to be doing, but I've got to tell the truth. And hopefully they'll be fired for their incompetence before my project is even halfway through.
When I had that interview that went viral with you in a podcast, you mentioned that you said to me, have you seen Game of Thrones? And I said, I didn't say anything because I hadn't. And you said, well, I'm Mance Raider.
You remember that?
I'm Mance Raider in the game. Well, I'll tell you what happened was I went home and I said, well, if Game of Thrones is good enough for Rob Hersov, it's good enough for me. And I started watching it, and I would sneak away every Saturday afternoon and find a bit of time to watch 1 or 2 episodes. It is brilliant. I'm reading the books at the moment.
Phenomenal.
Absolutely fantastic. And Mance Raider, however, was burnt at the stake and then died with an arrow in his heart. So Mance Raider
have his own people.
Yeah. What is is there any concern that could be happening to you?
Yes, there is. So Mance Raider was this character that most people had forgotten about. Mance Raider, if you know the Game of Thrones. But Mance Raider was an officer of the wall who crossed the wall, who went the other way, the other direction, and united all the disparate tribes, the giants and the wildlings, knowing that when the ultimate battle came, that would be a decisive factor. And Mance Raider pulled everyone together and made the difference in the decisive battle against they're called the White Walkers, the most evil. We won't go into that analogy for South Africa, for the bad guys,
the zombies,
and he got killed at the stake, for his contribution. So I've gone the other way to everyone else I know. I've come back to the country. I'm investing long term. I'm calling out and naming names of the people who are not standing up to fight the bad guys. And that's something I didn't mention in my speech. The big business people in this country are not standing up and defending you. They're not standing up and calling Cyril out for his incompetence, his moving slowly, his playing this bullshit long game, and letting this country deteriorate.
So you ended your talk by saying you would, if Madiba were to come back again, he would vote for the DA. But for many people, the DA, although it's very powerful in the Western Cape, is regarded as ANC light, especially when Muzi was running it. What's your view, or what's your comment to that?
So I know lots of the DA people, Diane Kohler-Barnard, Beverly Schaefer, Glynis Breitenbach, all every single day working hard and fighting on our behalf. John Steenhuisen, he was right in the midst amongst Andrew Jarvie and Jason and everyone else, standing up and fronting up on behalf of average civilians protecting their rights. You know, when Cyril was distant and lost, when everybody else was gone, the DA was right there on the ground. So, you know, we all criticize the DA. It's easy to criticize them. The ANC has branded them as a sort of white-only party. It's bullshit. Every day they fight for the good side of South Africa and fight for what we believe in. And it's so easy to pull them down and say, okay, let's back Herman, let's back Musi, let's back someone else. But every day the DA fight the fight. And you have to take cognizance of that, and you have to vote for them, and you have to support them.
So why don't they support Cape independence?
Because they're trying to save South Africa and not just the Cape. And it is a bit selfish. You know, I know a lot of people that live in Durban that, you know, Nick Johnson, for example, you know, he'll fly down and do his business in the Cape, but he loves being in Durban. He's never going to move to the Cape. So by taking the Cape independent, we're jettisoning great people like Nick Johnson, leaving them out to dry, you know. If the Cape goes independent, South Africa will go down the plug in seconds. It's gone. At least with the Western Province being part of South Africa, we can keep pointing out to the ANC and ANC voters that the only municipalities, the only cities, and the only province that is well run, where potholes are filled on the roads, is the Western Province. Why? Because it's run by the DA. The ANC have no idea how to run a municipality, a city, or a province. They only know how to break and steal. And that's, you know, you've got to have the DA sitting there showing the ANC that they actually have no idea what they're doing.
You know, when we were listening to Gigi Alcock yesterday, he was giving us a different view of life. He works in a world that is alien to many people from the suburbs.
Yeah.
And he said that generally people are happy. Generally people's lives have improved. So why would those people, the majority of people in South Africa, even consider voting for anyone other than the ANC?
That's the problem. There's 17 million people that don't vote at all. So the people that vote ANC still are in this fuzzy world of, you know, I was brought up by a single mother in the townships under apartheid, and the ANC changed our lives. Okay? I get it. I get it. That old mama, that old gogo, is never not going to vote ANC. She's going to stay with the ANC forever. But her children are starting to doubt the ANC because they're seeing the world for what it is, that the ANC are only out for themselves and only out for their own positions and own back pockets. So time will tell. The ANC will collapse under its own moral corrupt weight. It's going to happen. But for me, it's going to take too long. We've got to move this quicker.
But the world is moving, it is accelerating. It is now becoming a warp speed world rather than one that moved incrementally. We're moving exponentially. And what we saw in Zambia, that Musi spoke quite a lot about, H.H. Hichilema.
Who I know very well.
Tell us about him.
He's a fantastic guy. He's a businessman. We hosted him at an Invest Africa event at the encouragement of some Zambians to say, this is a great guy. And I interviewed him, and he is a great guy. I mean, he would be sitting here in this room, one of us. He's an entrepreneur, he's a businessman, but he's committed himself. He went to jail, he stayed the course, and he's now president of Zambia. The same with Lazarus in Malawi. These are two great people. Can the same thing happen in Zimbabwe? Can the same thing happen in South Africa? I have my doubts.
But the interesting part about this is now coming back to your Cape independence story. As we know, Zambia, Malawi, and Zimbabwe were once all part of one country. Now that they've split up, Malawi and Zambia are getting the kind of governance that I think any rational person would say is far better than the corrupt state capture type governance that one sees elsewhere to the south of that. Is that not an example to the Zimbabwean people, and indeed maybe even South African people, that if H.H. Hichilema and the Zambian people grab this, if people like you start telling an international community, here is a horse you can back in Africa, would that not start changing people's minds? Because at the moment, Zimbabweans are saying, what's the point in staying in Zimbabwe? I'll go to South Africa, it's a better life. Whereas if they, in the future, were to say, I'll go to Zambia, it's a better life, and maybe we can actually change our government there. So it gets back to that example, perhaps, that the Cape might give the rest of South Africa were it to be allowed to be run efficiently.
I mean, that's the dream. The dream is that the Cape goes independent, it flourishes, it's the other Rwanda of South Africa. And if any of you have been to Rwanda, you will see the lights go on when the darkness appears. There's no litter on the streets. There are no stray cats and dogs. It's an incredibly well-run country. Rwanda is a shining star. And the Cape would be the other shining star overnight. But, you know, is it ever going to be possible? I would love it to be possible. I just think it's a long shot. There's another point you've raised here. I don't know if it's the same in the KZN in Johannesburg, but all staff in people's homes are Malawian. All people working in restaurants in the Cape are Zimbabwean. All the security guards are Congolese. If those countries start to get their act together and turn around, maybe many of those people will return to their original countries. Leave South Africa.
But then we won't have car guards anymore.
Then we won't have car guards anymore. But, you know, then the employment situation in South Africa might improve. There'll be more jobs if people want those jobs. So there's a kind of reverse diaspora that could work in our favor.
But aren't we like the UK of Africa? Because the Brits don't like serving as waitrons, as we know. They've got a huge shortage. And perhaps the South Africans feel that let the Zimbabweans have those jobs, we'll get social security checks instead.
I mean, the Zimbabweans are the most literate people in Africa. It's quite extraordinary, you know, even though the country's been destroyed by evil clowns like Mnangagwa and Mugabe, you know, it is the most literate country. Every single Zimbabwean speaks beautiful English and their home language. It's extraordinary.
Rob, I think the point that I'm getting to here, you've worked a lot behind the scenes with the politicians for change, for positive change in South Africa, or at least as you perceive positive change. It's very hard to argue that we have that we don't need change in this country. Just watch Zondo or read any of it. But sometimes it might make sense to take a small step rather than one big jump. Yeah. If you go and talk to your average person who lives 100 kilometers from here, where Gigi grew up, they're going to say to you, Mr. Hersov, you're in a different world, in a different country. I couldn't care what you're saying about the ANC. I'm going to vote for them, and my children, my grandchildren will do that. Similarly in Limpopo, similarly in Mpumalanga, similarly maybe in the Northwest and other parts of the country. Doesn't it make sense to be incremental? Doesn't it make sense to say, okay, I'm going to now agitate for something that is achievable in my lifetime because these are my people. My people, there are, if you want to call them first world people in South Africa, at least 8 million, who, it's twice the population of Ireland. And at the moment, those people are saying, looking to people like you, looking to the Rob Hersovs of the world, saying, you got the money, you got the balls, why don't you actually do something that is going to make a difference in our lives, within our lifetime, rather than telling us, sorry, send your kids overseas, this is the end of maybe for some people 300-400 years of family.
Because I don't think the ANC can ever achieve any good for this country, even small incremental good. I think they're incapable of doing it. They are socialist in their constitution.
No, I get that, but why don't you work for something that is achievable? Because what is achievable? Cape independence.
I am giving money to Cape independence. I'm helping. They've gone over 50% in their poll. They are heading towards a referendum. We're putting pressure on the DA. I'm in two minds on that one. I do believe that the Cape could be independent and successfully so. I fear for all the people in this room who don't live in the Cape, who will then be left, you know, without that one glimmer of hope within South Africa that is the Cape, that is well run and well organized.
But you're saying to them,
South Africa would then.
But you're saying to them, send your kids overseas. You may as well. Why have a life if you're sending your kids elsewhere?
Yeah.
So rather stay in this country. Look, I think those of us from Joburg and KZN don't necessarily want to live in
dollar terms, you're going backwards. That's the problem. In dollar terms, you're going backwards by staying here. And if you don't mind, and if your life's okay, that's fine. But you know, for Jason's investing in bricks and mortar, Okay, that's the worst thing to be in South Africa if you're looking at a medium-term approach. You know, if it's throwing off enough cash and you can at least diversify, like Martin said yesterday, have some international dollar-based investments, fair enough. But if you're not doing that, I'd be very worried.
But thankfully, we have different opinions, different views. Some of us live in Johannesburg. We actually quite like it there. Some of us live here in KZN. We quite like it here as well. Or I might not so much.
Listen, I wanted to go back to Joburg. My whole idea was to come back to South Africa and be in Johannesburg. But my wife just said, forget it. She's a Kiwi. She said, we're going to go to Cape Town and that's that. And it's pretty incredible living down there. I mean, it's something. It's a bubble, but it's an extraordinary bubble.
Right, let's have our audience participation, although I don't suppose there are too many questions.
By the way, if you know that sniper, that sort of red sniper thing, if you see it on my forehead, just duck, okay? Because it's coming for me one day.
No, Rob, we're not a violent people.
No, not us. The guys up in Pretoria.
David.
I seem to be the person who takes the other side of panels, but I have enjoyed your talk. Really two things. Firstly, you touched on black economic empowerment, and I think you used the word theft. And although I agree that economic growth is the primary thing that we all need to strive for and will have the biggest impact on South Africa, do you think that will be quick enough without addressing inequality? I mean, it's not just, we've all most of us have benefited from the opportunities from apartheid, etc. I mean, people in the resources industry have particularly benefit. Without addressing that inequality, don't you think the time, even if we get economic growth right, will be too short to address, the hunger, the poverty, and the challenges of the country?
Did you hear Gigi yesterday, David?
So Gigi made the point yesterday. He said, we're always thinking of the poorest and the richest and saying this is one of the most unequal societies on earth. But he said in here is the sort of emerging vendor, V-E-N-D-O-R class, the entrepreneurial class that's emerging that are building businesses and making do. And it was inspirational. It was really a fascinating speech and a great understanding. If those people, and there must be millions of them, can get their act together, build their businesses, their spaza or their distribution or their wholesale businesses, and build a life where they're happier than being a domestic servant in someone's house, then there's hope. But what inequality are we trying to address? The fact that there are a small number of mainly white people that have made a fortune that need to give that away to ANC members. B hasn't worked. It's just favoring some of the few at the disadvantage of encouraging investment into this country. It was Chris that stood up, was it, yesterday, who said he's looking to invest in private equity in South Africa, but his international investors refuse to allow him to invest in anything that's BEE. I agree with them.
Yeah, I'm with Rob, unfortunately, on this one as well. I loved the interview I had with Clem Sunter. It's well worth going and watching. He says we need empowerment in South Africa, but empowerment of people to start businesses. He said that instead of Cyril Ramaphosa coming every now and then on television and having a family meeting about how many COVID cases we have, he should be having a family meeting about how many businesses are being created. So it's that kind of mindset shift. And as long as we think of, well, we must keep paying social grants, we ain't going to be going there, I guess. But
Zuma grants.
Well, yeah. Anyway, but there's lots of, it's wonderful debate and looking forward to the kind of future that successful countries have, what they've adopted. And very few of them have adopted socialism in the route we're on. But anyway, let me not take away from you, Nick.
Rob, very interesting chat, thank you. If not upbeat and uplifting, then very interesting. What do you think it is about the corporates in South Africa that they don't show any sign of pushing back? I mean, in many regions of the country right now, the government has been completely incapacitated. They're doing nothing. They're administering nothing. They have no capacity. And the only things that they can implement, they implement by virtue of the corporate sector doing it for them. BEE being a case to point, our lockdown being another case to point. So, I mean, there was, the question for me is why the corporations are not showing any sign of just saying, that's enough. You're on your own now. We're not going to do your bidding anymore.
So during apartheid, Harry Oppenheimer, the most powerful businessman, stood up and on an ongoing basis vocally attacked the Nats, and he took them on, okay? Followed by a whole lot of other business people. It's not happening under this ANC regime. They're not doing anything. They're either being co-opted or they're fearful of something. You know, fearful of losing their next BEE contract, fearful of not being part of the NHI and being a tenderpreneur, or fearful of the leftists attacking them from within. You know, I talk about always the ANC being the great evil. But around us, we have a lot of, you know, leftists, feminists, the new definition, and that evil left, the critical race theory being stuffed down bishops and Herschel, in my backyard, have hired this dreadful consultant who is stuffing critical race theory down teachers and kids' throats at our schools. And no one's standing up against them. Me again, you know, I've been branded, whatever I've been branded as. So there's just this fear across the board, or apathy, or I don't know what it is. But also, all the big voices that should be speaking have left. They've either left personally, gone overseas, financially emigrated, but haven't filled out the form, as Martin said yesterday, or they've just lost it. They've just said, you know, I'm not going to fight this battle on my own. It's terrible. Who is fighting the battle? Brave journalists, you know, crusaders, individual crusaders, and a couple of lunatics like myself who, you know, who knows where I'm going to end up on this one. It's terrifying. I don't know, Nick, do you have an idea why?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is in that pattern of past behavior. There was this mood during the 90s that you didn't take the ANC on directly. There would be a smoke-filled room where we got together and we would have a discussion, and the ANC would do the sensible thing. I mean, over the last year, I can't tell you how many times CEOs assured me that they'd had a conversation with Cyril or whoever, and X, Y, Z was going to happen. Don't worry, you can relax. And then it didn't happen. So that whatever compact they had between big business and the ANC, I think is vanished, and the behavior still carries on. They still think they're going to influence.
Do you know, I think there are a lot of people that think Cyril is the last bastion in defense of us against the real evil that sits behind him. And if we don't at least support Cyril or not attack him, the floodgates will open and we're going to be destroyed. I've met a lot of enemies today. Yeah. Has someone been taking down the names?
Hey, Rob, some of us are just falling asleep here, wishing you'd spoken your mind. Actually, thank you very much. It was great. Very hard to argue with anything you said. I certainly appreciate your courage. 4 years at Goldman in New York will do that. To your point of yesterday, I've been in the States for 22 years. I was born there, and I've come back here. I love it here. We're investing only in South Africa. I think, as a part comment and some question, a comment about investing in SA. There's an interesting statistic, or actually a study done by Harvard a decade or two ago. And what they did is they looked at countries going back 100 years. They took the top 50 countries, and they said, can we determine which countries are going to be in a better position, GDP per capita, 10 years hence? And they looked at any number of factors, PhDs per capita, etc. And the very interesting, the one that I would never have guessed, is its number of dollars per capita in domestic bank accounts. And that might be too much for our government to grasp, but of course it speaks to the message of optimism, and people here with excess cash, they'd be crazy to put it in FNB, and when they could put it in Wachovia. So, that's what I'm just really corroborating your point. My question though is, what about the opportunities here? America, as you know, is a brutal place to do business.
Yeah.
There are 320 rich, smart, ambitious people fighting for margin. And when we sit around a board table in the States, we discuss strategy, innovation, et cetera, et cetera. Here, I spend the first 3 months discussing BEE. And I'm thinking, I'm hiding to nothing. How am I going to compete? Nevertheless, if I'm going to do local business, there's a wealth of opportunity here because the services are so appalling. So, what's your view on that? I mean, you're investing in bits and pieces, so are we, and there appears to be great opportunity. We're buying some assets for, my favorite price, theft less 20, and they're great opportunities.
So,
Thanks, Chris.
Was it Martin of Orbvest? Martin. So Martin, I thought Martin's presentation was very interesting from a lot of different angles. But the one comment he made that's so true is scale. If you're building something in America, you're building for 50, how many states in America? 52. You're building for 50 states. You build it once and you've got 50 states you can expand across. In South Africa, you're basically Detroit, Michigan only. And then you think maybe into the rest of Africa. But very few entrepreneurs think South Africa to the world, except in technology. So I've met a whole lot of tech companies in South Africa whose IP is overseas. They've raised their angel money in South Africa. They're building a product or a service, and that technology product or service can go to the world. 4 unicorns have come out of Africa already this year, and they're going to be another 4. Next year, there'll be 20. Africa is very investable from a technology point of view. I'm a huge believer in that. And I've invested in a small company in Cape Town called Moment, M-O-M-I-N-T, which is a blockchain NFT business. And I know you all know about NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which I didn't know about 3 months ago. But this is a business that is thinking global from Cape Town, from day one. So, would I invest in bricks and mortars other than an airport and a stock exchange? No more. I promise you no more. But technology has a real opportunity, and you can do it from here.
The way, and we've also expanded globally. We went to go and live for 3 years in the UK. And the way we see it is that you can arbitrage South African skills at very low cost into a global environment where you can earn hard currencies. And it's just really a basic thing. And there are, in a media business, of course, it's more difficult because of your localization of the news that you're producing. But in any tech business, there are fantastic skills in this country. Fantastic. It's a great place to live. If you can be secure and happy within your environment, then why move anywhere? And we're seeing increasingly these kind of opportunities. So I think I'm just supporting what Rob says. And as an entrepreneur, it's a different world here. We don't have business science in South Africa. In America, it's business science. Here we have often business just by gut feel. Often you'll talk to people, I'm sure you've seen this, that you'll discuss a great idea, but if you don't persist and go back to the person at time and time again, well, they've moved on to another great idea, and so on and so forth. Whereas in the US, you've got one great idea, you pull it through to conclusion because there aren't that many other opportunities for you. So I think you're on the right page there, Chris. I disagree completely with what Rob says about investing in this country. The big returns are going to be made here. And we're in a business together, so I'm quite surprised at what he's saying. In Altvest. And Altvest is going to be uncovering those exponential companies. And we'll be helping with Warren, with the Arena guys. It's his idea, of course. Everything seems to be coming from Warren nowadays. But we'll be helping with him to expose those companies into the future and giving opportunities, capital opportunities, investment opportunities there. It's an exciting world we're in.
Alec, can I make a final comment? And I know we're 4 minutes over now, okay? Because we
4
did start
minutes.
late.
We're still 5 minutes to go, so
Okay.
we're not over yet.
So Martin talked about why are South Africans so successful overseas, but I think he missed something. I saw a study that said there are 50,000 South African expats who have now moved to America. And per capita, they are the most successful expats in America of all, ahead of the Jews, the Indians, and whomever. that the South African expats in America have overachieved beyond anyone else. Why? I think there's a reason why. The Australians and New Zealanders go abroad knowing that they are eventually going to go home. When South Africans leave, they cut the umbilical cord. They say, I'm leaving because I have to, because the ANC are going to destroy this country, and I can't come back, and therefore I have to make my life abroad a success. And they work harder, they're more committed, they're more dynamic than any other of the competing countries or competing expats. I honestly believe we're not, you cut the cord and you're not going to go back. You have to be successful.
I want to ask you about the Cape Independence. Who's going to be eligible to live there? Who's going to get a passport? Because my husband and I are from Cape Town, and we've been in KZN for 2 years now. I lived there for 20 years. He lived there for 40 years. None of us were born there. We have some property there, and we'd love to live there. But, yeah, maybe you can just shed some light on that.
So the rules are, if you're registered to vote, if you're registered to vote there, you're automatically a citizen of the Cape. And you can move there. I mean, I flew up to Durban with 2 people who'd just been down there looking for a place because they're going to semigrate to the Cape. I do also think that if the negotiations do happen, the borders will initially be the current electoral borders of the Western Cape, but there's always going to be, additional inclusions or exclusions on a negotiated basis. It's never as easy as you think it is. There's also negotiation of who pays who. Does the Cape pay South Africa to exit, or does South Africa pay the Cape to bugger off? Who knows? Who gets the Navy? There's lots of comments. There's lots of things that have to be discussed.
Who gets the Navy?
Who gets the Navy? We want the Navy.
Yeah, I'm Gauteng, we want it, for sure. We're a pan.
There's another technology. There's another technological development you need to all be looking at called distributed autonomous organizations, DAOs. Okay, I didn't know about this till 4 weeks ago, so don't worry if you feel that you've been left out with NFTs and DAOs. But Nick's nodding his head, and we had a chat about it. There are going to be new forms of nation states developed, where you live will be irrelevant. And I'll tell you this very quickly. Let's say we agreed 10 values that we all agreed on. We believe in democracy and capitalism and free market. Tick. We believe that there are only 2 genders. Tick. Okay? We believe whatever those 10 things are, and that there are 5 to 10 million people in the world that absolutely sign off on those 10 things. Okay? And then based on the blockchain and based on Ethereum smart contracts, okay, you do know what those are, we are linked into a society together wherever you live. So we have the same values, we have the same beliefs, and you form a country of 5 to 10 million people that has economic power, the same value system, and uses their economic power and the value system to achieve certain goals for their citizens. There'll be 2 world orders. You'll be living in the country of the Western Cape or in South Africa, but you'll be part of a DAO, whatever its name is, that connects 5 to 10 million people around the world and uses their economic power. Somebody said it's a modern form of, what was it, the Hanseatic League. Coming to you soon.
Rob Hersov, thank you for your contribution.
Thank you, everyone.